perfect, recording. So it's goedendag or good day to everyone. My name is Melanie. I am from Australia. My family history is Argentinian, so I speak a tiny bit of Dutch. So if you prefer to speak in Dutch, I can try and understand, but I will respond in English. I'm too shy. But yeah, so today I'm not going to be speaking necessarily much about the Enneagram. But what I'll be presenting to you is this method. And this method is something that has been developed by my father, Dr. Carlos A. Raimundo. He's a psychiatrist from Argentina who has also studied neuroscience. He did psychodrama as well, a lot in Argentina, fell in love with psychodrama, and wanted to come up with something that you can do psychodrama with yourself, because psychodrama is done in groups. And so he's developed this method about 30 years or more ago called the play of life. And it's with Playmobil figures. And I now am working with him. I'm the Associate Director of Relationship Capital. And my role is combining the power of the Enneagram and the play of life together. So I'll be showing you the method, and I can help you. There's a seat there, and there's two here. Over there in the middle, or in these two. So you can squeeze. Yes, so we'll play with them later, but what I'm going to show you is a little bit of the science behind why we do it. So I'm going to show you a little bit about the neuroscience. We do this in corporate, so I work a lot in corporate teams, and we use this method with corporate teams. But I also use it in individual therapy, so I'm also a counsellor, and I use it with couples and in family. It's quite a flexible method. For you to know, I'm a 4 with a wing of 3, quite strong, trying to tap into my other types. And I am studying psychology as well, just for fun, just to add a little bit more. But I also ask if you have any questions for me to begin with, just about me, because it's always nice to know who you're talking to, who's presenting to you. So if anybody has any questions for me, feel free to ask away before we start.
Where do you live?
I live 20 minutes from Sydney Centre, Gladesville. Yeah.
And you practice in Sydney?
Yes. And we also have an online course, which you can see in the flyer. And the online course is available in Portuguese and Spanish. So I've also presented in Argentina before. And so we have clients internationally as well that we stay in touch with via Skype. Any other questions for me? If not, I think we can begin. So what we say is, the reason why we call it ourselves relationship capital is because we say our biggest capital in life are relationships. So the key component to relationship capital are relationships. And basically we say that this is about first knowing myself, then knowing others, and then managing the interface between the two. We say the power is between us. So,
can I have a question? Are we going to have access to what you're presenting?
I can afterwards I'm going to put up an email that you can send me, and I'll send all the information. Okay. And there's also access to online materials.
Okay.
Yep. No worries. So yes, so knowing myself, knowing others, and managing the interface between the two. So what we say in life is that we can be pointy or we can be flat in public. So we have this mask that we put on. We have this, I'm fine. So on the surface, I can say I'm fine. Nothing's wrong. All is fine. But sometimes what's beneath the surface are harder stories, harder things that we can handle. So we can feel low, but we're trying to show a different side of ourselves. So as my father has done a neuroscience degree, we apply this to the brain. So when we look at the brain, what we see is that when we feel down, we either want to strangle someone, or we want to flee. And that's why we say we freeze, flee, or fight. The reptilian response. So we say the brain can genuinely not accept failure or ambiguity. So we put a mental block in front of this, and anyone that studies psychology or knows roughly a little bit about the brain, we call this a cognitive bias, or simply just a justification for our behaviour. So I'm okay, I'm fine. I can say, someone can ask me, how are you? And, we may feel this comes up underneath, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I heard bad news this morning. But I respond, I'm okay, it wasn't me. So anybody know the first story in the Bible of Adam and Eve? What was the first thing after Adam ate the apple? Does anybody remember what God, what did he reply to God when he said, who ate the apple?
It was not me, it was the woman.
The woman. But he went one step further and he said, the woman you gave me. Now, irregardless whether we're religious or not, or whether we believe the Bible or the first story, it's still a story in a very ancient book. And the first story in that book. So it's funny how we can see in our history, this is quite embedded in us, no matter how long ago. And that's also, you see it in the Enneagram. You hear people, when you're starting to learn the Enneagram types, when you're starting to learn who am I, where can I sit in the Enneagram, what's my type? So often we see the not so good parts of the Enneagram and we think, oh no, I don't like that word, or I don't like what that says. Usually, not all the time, but it's usually because there is an aspect of it affecting us. So it goes, I had someone say, we work with nuns a lot. So I worked with I worked with 5 sisters in this beautiful abbey. And I had one of them call me up and she said, I don't like the word envy. I don't like that I'm envious. And I said, well, it doesn't have to be envy of jealousy necessarily. So this is about the fall. It doesn't have to be envy that I'm jealous of someone, but it can be envy in a different word, if you prefer, and say that person gets it easier than me in life. So I say, use the language that helps you. But as Russ said this morning, language is important. They are just words, but at the same time, they can have an effect on us. So what happens when someone pushes my button and I respond in a freeze, flee, or fight response like this, but I can't see it? And I justify it. So I always invite people, when they come into my workshop, I say, try and leave behind the but and because. Leave that out there. Because here we're just going to focus on the what. There's something that we say that is so powerful to me. We judge others for their actions, but we judge ourselves on our intention. So imagine if we were aware of how others perceive our intention. So again, I also say, don't treat others the way that you want to be treated. Treat them the way that they want to be treated. And the beauty of the Enneagram is that we can start having that empathy and patience for others. So I invite you all, just for this moment, while we have this in our mind, and now that you have a rough idea of what you expect from today, from this workshop, I invite you to either close your eyes or feel comfortable in your chair and just have a minute breathing and being very centered, as Russ said, and think, what is my intention for this workshop? Why am I here? Why did I choose to be here today, and what do I want to get out of it? So just 1 minute just to think about that. Okay, that was 1 minute. Was that long for anyone? So for me, sometimes a minute is long, because especially in a society where we're running, and we're rushing, and we're trying to be on time, and I know personally, I've rushed myself too much. A minute can seem like an eternity sometimes. So beautiful if you can do it. If not, that's also fine. We're all learning. So based on this, when I feel like this in the not so good, how can I go beneath the surface? How can I tap into this? How can I go behind the wall? Well, we say that one way is the play of life. So one thing that I love about the Enneagram is that it shows us this is the way we are. It also shows us that we're not alone. Out of billions of people, we have similarities. We have the same common struggles together. But it also, you may, if some of you, who's a practitioner here? Who's like a therapist or a counsellor, coach? Beautiful. So when we, irregardless of whether I'm a practitioner, a coach, a trainer, or even just applying it in my own life with people, you can understand that having insight is not easy for some. Maybe for some it's easy, and I know that that's who I am. I can look at my type and say, that's me. But some people it may take a long time, and that's fine. But one thing we have found with the play of life, and we're studying this now of why this works, is that it seems to bypass the neocortex and go straight to the feeling part. So when we do the play of life technique, you may show yourself something you don't know, or you may show yourself something you did know. But I also ask you, what is the other person feeling? What is the other person doing? And very often we don't think of what the other person is feeling or doing. So Carlos has worked with this method with many, many people, but he's included working with pedophiles and with very difficult cases where people may not have had that insight of what they did was wrong, because in their eyes it wasn't wrong. And that doesn't mean that they're, we can't label them of good or bad. It just means that they didn't know, they didn't see it. So we have case studies on our website of how this has actually impacted those people and how they have reached insight. It's been incredible. Yes?
Can I just ask for clarification? This iceberg picture, what is the difference between above the water level and under the water level? Is it conscious or unconscious?
Yes. So it's,
or is it like the pre-cortex?
It's a combination of the two.
Okay.
It's kind of a combination of the two. So the way Carlos explains it is that the way the play of life has been formatted is not in Greek thinking. So in Greek thinking, you have the idea of a psychologist, general thinking of psychology, that we know the answer. That this person is like this because of child assaults or child abuse, or this happened. So it's because we know the answer. Or, that's just in their unconscious. So that's a very Freudian way of thinking of conscious, subconscious. The way that we think of it more is biologically, just that we can't see it. It's just something so that's why you can use the word unconscious. But basically what we say is that in the Jewish thinking, in the Jewish sort of philosophical thinking, you have, so the Greek thinking, you've got 1 + 1 = 2. I know the answer. The Jewish thinking is 1 + 1 = X. We don't know. And we may never know. And the beauty of the play of life is I don't need to know your own personal story. You can show it to me. You can show yourself. You can show yourself what's happening beneath the surface, behind that wall. So it's that, we're using the idea of the iceberg because it's a very general way of thinking of the iceberg effect. So we think of the wall as well. Does that answer roughly?
Yes.
So when you think of the Enneagram, you remember the fears of each type. So failure and ambiguity these words can mean different things for different people, specifically different types, different things press those buttons, different things trigger that fear. So each of us have that fear. So what is it? So the 1 of being flawed, the 2 of being unloved, 3 of being worthless, the 4 of being insignificant, the 5 of being helpless, the 6 of unsafe, the 7 of being trapped in pain, the 8 of being at risk, and the 9 of being disconnected. So what I teach in corporate with the play of life is when we tap into our type, very often when I show myself what's happening on the play of life, I go, oh my goodness, that was my fear that was being touched. And when we think about it, we go, oh my goodness, not again. Why? How is it so accurate? It's scary. So we combine it like that because in many methods you have a person say, and so what? With all this counselling, with all this therapy, what am I going to do with that? So this helps people have a concrete way of moving up through the levels, moving up to that higher understanding and the best of ourselves, as Russ said. And this helps us have that we can see it. So another aspect that you're going to see in the play of life that we'll come back to is active roles. So we say that active roles consist of a feeling plus an action. So a lot of people, there's many different types of thinking, but there's one type of thinking that I am what I say I am. So I am who I think I am. But there's other people that say you are what you do. So maybe it's both, maybe it's one, I don't know. But the idea of feeling an action, we have a constructive role. A constructive role lifts a relationship. This is what we teach. So that's a calm explainer, for example, a clear boundary setter. Some types may find this easier to do, some may not. Depending on the situation, we probably may all find it difficult to do. To be a clear boundary setter, clear confronter, is not very easy for anyone to do, really. Because an 8 may have no problem with confronting someone, but that confronting becomes confrontational. So how can I do it in the way that best suits that person? So when I know that person's type, roughly, I can also be a bit more aware that perhaps if it's a 2, they need a bit more comforting, a bit more compliments. So how can I make sure that I'm talking to them in the right way? Something that's important with a constructive role, it's not something we always like, but it's appropriate and it lifts the relationship. The person may not enjoy it in the moment. If you're confronting someone, they may not enjoy it. But it will help them in the long run. It'll help the relationship. A fragmenting role diminishes a person and diminishes the relationship. So, for example, an angry withdrawer or a righteous punisher, or any other type. So each different type will respond differently. Again, the disintegration, the integration, the stress level. And as Carlos explains it, so Carlos is an 8 and I'm a 4. Father-daughter. And the way that he explains the fragmenting role is usually sometimes you like to play it. And so that makes sense coming from an 8. He says that he sometimes enjoys playing, for example, a righteous punisher. And then afterwards he goes, oh, I just did that. I can't believe I did that to the person. But in the moment, we sometimes enjoy that feeling. So the other one is an ambivalent role. An ambivalent role is the most insidious role we play, and we play it often. And something that I've heard once in a workshop that I did, a conference that I attended with the Enneagram, was someone saying to me, it's hard when you're doing a lot of personal work and others around you aren't. It's hard for you to have that growth on your own. As Russ said, it's impossible to do it on your own. So we always need we need support, and that's why it's beautiful to have this community that we can be around each other. But an ambivalent role is something that can also be played a lot when we have to explain a lot to people. be that extra patient, have that underlying resentment when I'm caring for someone. You know, you can think it automatically, you can see different types in these examples, you know, but we can all do them. As Russ said, we can do them all. So, a resentful carer, an example that we give. You have a mother who works full-time and the child gets sick. The mother and father both work and the mother decides, well, my job's a bit more flexible so I can take the time off to be at home to take care of the child. So she takes the time off work and is there day and night to take care of the child. After 4 days of caring for the sick child, the husband is home on the weekend and enjoying just having a beer and watching a football match or something, which is fair enough, he's enjoying his weekend. The baby cries, going, "Mom!" And she goes, "Oh my goodness, can you please go up, sweetie?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure," like he intends to, but he doesn't go in that moment. So what does she do? She goes, "Okay, fine." So she goes up and she's acting as a resentful carer. So we so often try and do the best, but it's that feeling underneath that's bubbling inside or hurting our chest or giving us a headache. You know, so all of this that I'm telling you is preparing you for this technique that we're going to do. But before that, I want to have a little talking activity amongst pairs, so in pairs. So introduce yourself to the person if you don't know them. Say a little bit about you, but then I want you to share when a time you remember, so I don't have a whiteboard, so I can't write this down, unfortunately. But one question is, when you remember someone coming to you as a fragmenting role and you responded in constructive, but also a time when someone has come to you in a fragmenting role and you responded either fragmenting or ambivalent. So just for you to have the idea of how I respond to different stimulus. So I'll give you, what we'll do is we'll have 3 minutes per person, and so I'll time it and then switch and let you know when to switch. Is that clear? Anybody have any questions? So, yes? So when someone has come to you, for example, as a righteous punisher, you did this wrong, and you responded as a calm explainer. "I'm so sorry I didn't do the dishwasher the way you liked it." So, explaining calmly. So, what's the time that you responded well? And what's the time that you weren't able to respond well? That you responded in a fragmenting or ambivalent way? So someone's come to you screaming, and you either withdraw or scream back. So there's 2 examples. One good, one bad. Is that clear? Yeah. So one time I've responded not good, one time I've responded good. And introduce yourselves, please. So that's 3 minutes each, and I'll time it. Okay, the self-representation technique. It shows us the not so good and the good side of us. If we have time today, we'll do another technique as well. So fingers crossed, we can get it done. So, what you're going to do is you're going to show me, you're just going to show yourself the 2 sides of you. So, what I'm going to ask you to choose a figure that represents you. And but for now, just watch me, and then you can do it. So you have a kit per 2 people, so 1 kit to share between 2, and then I think you have your own, and I think you have your own too, because then you're cut apart. That's yours, and then that one's yours with the little koala. Okay. So first of all, choose a figure to represent you in the not so good, and place them on the left-hand side in the box on the left. So if you can just watch for now. So if you can just watch for now, just because I'll explain. So you act in this. So show me how you act first. Don't make me sing.
How about you try so that we know?
I will sing.
Or not?
Yeah, but it may break glass, so let's not do that yet. Okay, so show me how you are in the not so good. And how is the other person? How does the other person respond? Now, I only want you to choose 1 figure at this point in time. So that other person can be a symbol for multiple people, or it can be a symbol for just 1 person in your life. So choose the other person and place them. So this is my story. So this is what I act. So this is me in the not so good, and this is the other person. So now if you can place your figures on the left-hand side, and please be quiet. Do not talk with each other. This is a moment for you. This is a moment for you to see. So be selfish